I'm Rachel McCullough with the United States Environmental Protection Agency. I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy lives to be here with us today. Since we are in this virtual space, I wanted to run through some logistical information first. All microphones have been muted and web cameras have been disabled, so there is no need to look for those buttons. We have also disabled meeting chat for today's session. Instead, we will be using the Q&A button so that you may privately submit questions. If you are having any trouble accessing the features in Zoom, please reach out using the Q&A feature. You can find the Q&A feature on the bottom of your screen. If you are listening on the phone and cannot access the Q&A function, press *9 to let us know you have a question. Once we identify you by the last 4 digits of your phone number, press *6 to unmute. If you need Spanish interpretation services, live Spanish interpretation is available. To listen in Spanish, click the interpretation button with a globe icon and then make your language selection. Hoy ofrecemos interpretación en vivo a través de audio Zoom. Haga clic en el botón en forma de globo para acceder a los servicios de interpretación. Luego, seleccione su idioma preferido, inglés o español. We're going to give folks another minute or two to join, and then we'll get started. Good morning, everyone. For those just joining, I want to again thank you for taking the time to be here with us virtually today. Today, we will be covering 2 proposed EPA actions to reduce ethylene oxide risk at commercial sterilization and healthcare facilities. These actions, if finalized, would apply to the American Contract Systems commercial sterilizer facility here in Temple Terrace. I'm Rachel McCullough from the United States Environmental Protection Agency, and I'm the moderator for today's meeting. First, I want to acknowledge that for many of you, this is the first time you are hearing of this topic and are uncertain how it impacts you and your family's lives. And for that, we sincerely apologize. Our goal today is to introduce you to this topic by providing an overview of what it is, why we are here, and what we are doing about it. While there is a sense of urgency to today's meeting, we want to emphasize that this is not the first or last time we will be here. We are here today because our mission at EPA is to protect human health and the environment, and because EPA is taking a series of actions to reduce health risks from a specific chemical, ethylene oxide, that is both a source of air pollution in America and a source of potential risk to workers who work with this chemical. Today, we'll share background information about these health risks and the significant steps EPA is taking to protect workers who are exposed to this chemical, as well as people who live, work, play, or go to school or daycare near facilities that use it. And we'll also talk about how you can get involved in providing input on EPA's actions. We understand it can be hard to learn about potential health risks you may be facing because some of the information for how EPA is addressing this risk can be pretty technical. I want to acknowledge that this is not necessarily an easy conversation we're going to have here today. As an agency, we are committed to meaningful community engagement and discussion on what environmental contaminants are impacting communities. That is why we are here today. We strongly believe that this communication is important and that for us to best protect health, we need to share the information we have with you all. It is also important that we do that in a way that is understandable and that helps inform decisions you may be making about your own lives. This is part of why we have a lot of time set aside today to take questions from you. If we say things today that are hard to follow, we speak too much technical language, or we just don't cover things that are important to you, please let us know, and we will take the time to explain things a different way. Before we turn to the presentations, I want to take time to explain in more detail how the question and answer sessions will work. We're going to answer questions at different points throughout, after all the presentations are completed, and then at the end. Please feel free to submit a written question at any time using the Q&A feature on Zoom, which is one of the buttons at the bottom of your screen. Any comment you have about the proposed action should be submitted via the regulations.gov website or as a written comment. We will provide direct written answers to some questions as they come in, and for others, I will read the question and our panelists will answer out loud. We're going to do our best to answer as many questions as possible today. That may mean that we group similar questions together for our panelists. I may also ask our panelists to clarify or add detail if I feel an answer was unclear. If you feel your question is important and we didn't get to it, or if you feel the answer to your question wasn't clear or quite what you were looking for, please know you can also email us at eto@epa.gov, and we will work to answer your questions there in the coming days. This is an informational meeting, and we will do our best to answer your general questions which you submit here in the Q&A. If you wish to have your comments and concerns included on the record as part of the formal process for any of the EPA actions we're discussing today, that is a separate process. There are several ways to make your voice heard, and we will be discussing those in more detail as part of these presentations. So, with those instructions out of the way, I'd like to introduce you to those you will be hearing from today. We will have a welcome from the Acting Administrator for EPA Region 4, Janine Gettle, and a panel of EPA experts, including Tony, Deputy Division Director for the Air and Radiation Division, Seneca Anderson, an engineer for the Air and Radiation Division, and Aaron Jones, Emerging Contaminants Coordinator. We will also have technical experts available for a question and answer session, including our partners at the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry and the Hillsborough County Environmental Protection Commission, Air Division. The question and answer session is limited to the current rule and the risks that have been identified. Please be mindful that we are unable to accept verbal comments on the proposed rule in action, as those should be submitted formally online or via mail. As we get started with today's presentation, I would like to turn it over to the Acting Regional Administrator for EPA Region 4, Janine Gettle. Ms. Gettle has been with the agency for over 36 years and brings a wealth of expertise to the environmental protection work in the Southeast. In fact, Ms. Gettle has extensive knowledge with the two statutes we will be discussing today, the Clean Air Act and the Federal Insecticide, Fungicide, and Rodenticide Act. In her role as Regional Administrator, she oversees our agency goals of protecting human health and the environment here in the Southeast region. For those of you that don't know, Region 4 represents 8 states, including Florida, and 6 federally recognized tribes. Acting Regional Administrator Gettle is a strong and passionate leader who has dedicated her career to ensuring science and the law guides the protection of public health and the environment for all our communities. R.A. Gettle, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Good morning. Thank you for taking your time out of your busy lives to be with us today to learn more about the issue of ethylene oxide emissions in the area of Temple Terrace. I also want to thank the staff and leadership at the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry, the Hillsborough County Environmental Protection Commission, Air Division, and the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. We work closely with these organizations and their teams to ensure the fair implementation of environmental laws and the protection of public health and the environment. And we are fortunate to have them coordinating with us throughout this process. We are here today to talk about air pollution from a chemical called ethylene oxide. As my colleagues will discuss in more detail, ethylene oxide can cause health risks, and it is also an important chemical to ensure the safety of a wide variety of medical devices that are used by doctors, hospitals, and dentists. This chemical is used in a type of facility known as a commercial sterilizer. There are about 186 commercial sterilizers around the country, and some of them are emitting ethylene oxide into the outdoor air at a level that is concerning. This includes the American Contract Systems facility here in Temple Terrace. We are here because EPA is in a rulemaking process to address risk from these types of facilities. EPA is committed to communicating clearly, frequently, and as transparently as possible on matters of risk. So it is extremely important to us that we convene a meeting with the residents and other impacted groups near the American Contract Systems facility. I want to tell you just a little bit about our typical rulemaking. Our typical rulemaking process would be that we would propose a rule with an identified public comment period, typically 30 days, but sometimes 60 to 90, depending on the nature of the rule. And then the agency takes the time to read the comments and respond to the comments and finalize the rule. And this typically can take a year or more. And then the company generally has 3 years to come into compliance. This traditional process only provides the community with a certain amount of time to learn about the rule and provide feedback, all during the rulemaking process. However, we are trying to do differently here. We have an unprecedented commitment in our agency right now to access, equity, and leadership. So as we began our rulemaking process last fall, EPA also began conducting early outreach to communities with commercial sterilizers emitting ethylene oxide over a certain risk level. This was a departure for us from the normal process, which I just described, but a process we felt was important to ensure communities understood the risk and had an opportunity to participate in our rulemaking. When we started this early outreach process last fall, we were unaware of the risk level posed by the American Contract Systems facility, so we did not initially reach out to your community. However, as will be discussed in more detail later, we are now aware of a risk. So even while we are in the midst of our rulemaking process, we wanted to meet with your community. And I'm just going to acknowledge that I saw in the chat that there was some difficulty using the links in the email or the notice that came out to you. And we apologize for that. We're willing to work with you all to make sure that you have full access to all of the information. And we'll encourage you to raise any concerns about that as we proceed through the meeting. So we are now aware of the risk, and we're here today to talk to you about it. So we are going to provide you with background information on ethylene oxide and an overview of the proposed actions the agency is taking public comment on at this time. The public comment period for these actions ends on June 27th. The timing is not ideal, but there is still time for you to participate in this process. Our purpose today is to give you the information so that you will be informed about how this issue impacts you and your family, and be able to make an informed decision about participation in the public rulemaking process. We believe your perspective is valuable to this process. As I stated earlier, although we are in the middle of the public comment period, this is only the beginning of the conversation. EPA is sharing this information so that you have access to the same information that we have at EPA and can make informed decisions about risks and your health. EPA is committed to keeping you informed throughout this process. So before I turn it back over to Rachel, I want to leave you with the following. Risk in Temple Terrace is high, and EPA is concerned about the risk. We are committed to protecting health in communities facing risk from ethylene oxide, and we are taking this issue seriously. I commit to you today that we will continue to work on this issue until the risk levels are reduced. This includes using tools we have available to us at EPA, such as regulations, like we're talking about today, and on-the-ground partnerships with states, communities, facilities, and anyone else who will work with us to help reduce the risk. These partnerships have already reduced risk in a number of communities, but we want and need to do more. You deserve to be part of this process, to have your voices heard, your concerns shared, and your needs met. We are here to provide you with the background information to assist you in asking questions today, and as importantly, submitting your perspective to the official record. I want to remind you that if it's not in the official record, it cannot be considered in the rulemaking process. You can also find more details about everything we will talk about tonight, including how to make your voice heard on EPA's website, over the phone, by directly emailing us and submitting your formal comments for the record. Thank you again for joining us here today and for taking your time to listen to what we have to tell you. I will now turn it back over to Rachel. Thank you.
Thank you, Janine. I also want to acknowledge the presence of the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. Environmental Division is also amongst our a panel of experts, and they'll be assisting us as questions come in. Our next presenter is Tony. Tony is the EPA Region 4 Air and Radiation Deputy Division Director, where he oversees a team of technical experts working on air issues in Region 4. Tony works closely with local, tribal, and state governments, like the Hillsborough County Environmental Protection Commission, Air Division, and the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, industry, and others to achieve and maintain clean indoor and outdoor air, including reduction of exposures and risks associated with criteria and hazardous air pollutants, like the EtO risk from the commercial sterilizer in your community. Tony, I will now turn it over to you.
Thank you, Rachel. Good morning, everyone. As Rachel stated, I am Tony, and I serve as the Deputy Director of the Air and Radiation Division at the Environmental Protection Agency Region 4 office in Atlanta, Georgia. I do want to thank you for taking time out of your busy lives to be here today. At the EPA, it is our mission to protect human health and the environment. You've already heard that there's a pollution from a specific chemical in this community. It is coming from an air toxic that is called ethylene oxide, which we often refer to as EtO. As Acting Regional Administrator Gettle said, it is unfortunate that we were unaware of this risk in your community when we began early outreach last fall. But we are here today to make you aware of what we have learned, and we intend to address your concerns. At this time, I'm going to share information on the long-term health risk, and the key word is long-term health risk posed by the inhalation of uncontrolled EtO emissions from the American Contract Systems facility located at 7802 East Telecom Parkway in Temple Terrace, Florida. Again, we're here today to provide you with a background on ethylene oxide and its impact, as well as talk to you about the recently proposed EPA actions designed to reduce that risk and help you understand how you can provide comments on these proposed actions. What is EtO? Let's review briefly what we know about ethylene oxide and its uses. Occasionally, people call the chemical EO, as well as if you see EtO or ethylene oxide, it's all talking about the same exact chemical. You usually can't smell or see EtO in the amounts we find in air near the facilities or in the communities. EtO is used for two main purposes. First, in the chemical manufacturing process, EtO is used as a building block to make antifreeze and in some processes, plastic bottles and other consumer goods. We're not concerned about a risk to you from that type of use in this community. The second is the use of EtO in commercial sterilization industry at facilities like American Contract Systems, which is located in Temple Terrace. The American Contract Systems EtO is used to sterilize medical equipment and supplies for dental medical industries. Specifically, ACS assembles and sterilizes customized surgical kits from local area hospital, medical facilities, and veterinary clinics. For this conversation, the EtO of concern is coming out of the American Contract Systems facility as an air pollutant only. We have no indication that EtO is being discharged into the water or onto the ground in any other way that will cause a risk. We have learned that EtO is more toxic than we previously thought, and that is a cause of cancer when people are exposed over long periods of time. Specifically, EtO can cause breast cancer, cancers of the blood system, and lymphatic system. By long periods, we mean when a person who lives near these facilities breathes EtO every day for 24 hours a day from birth until the age of 70. But it's important to point out that some people are more at risk from EtO than others, either because they spend more time in the areas where there's a lot of EtO, like workers who work at these facilities, or it can happen because for some reason their bodies are more susceptible. Children and babies are more vulnerable to EtO exposure, and because we know that children are more vulnerable, we explicitly consider that in our analysis on the risk assessments. We're here today so that we can tell you about our proposed actions to deal with this risk. We have proposed 3 separate regulatory actions to lower emissions of EtO into the air and reduce the health risk that it poses. We believe the way to reduce the risk that EtO poses is to reduce its usage and to reduce the amount that is being emitted into the environment. First, we have proposed more stringent standards under the nation's Pesticides Control Law, the Federal Insecticide, Fungicide, and Rodenticide Act, or commonly called FIFRA. These more stringent requirements will apply to all uses of EtO as a pesticide or sterilizing agent and are designed to provide greater protection to the worker and the communities. Second, we have proposed to strengthen our existing federal regulations that govern air emissions from commercial scale sterilizers like American Contract Systems. These proposed changes are designed to significantly reduce air emissions from these facilities and reduce risks to the surrounding communities. And thirdly, we have proposed to strengthen our existing federal regulations that govern air emissions from chemical manufacturing plants. We won't focus on this proposed action today because there are no chemical manufacturers who use EtO in the Temple Terrace area. Seneca and Aaron will be sharing more details about the first 2 proposed actions in a few minutes and how these proposed actions will reduce EtO usage and minimize emissions. Now I'm going to share a little bit more detail about the analysis we have completed and what it tells us about these facilities. EPA scientists analyzed the best information and data available, some of which were collected from these facilities in 2021 and 2022. The EPA then combined the data with other local information like weather patterns and other locations of the homes. Using these factors, the EPA was able to model the risk from EtO. I want to note that EPA's analysis only reflects your potential exposure risk related to EtO from American Contract Systems. So the risk I'm sharing information about today is in addition to or incremental long-term risk of getting certain cancers from EtO that we have modeled. To estimate risk from a given chemical, we need to know 3 things: how toxic the chemical is, and how close the source is, and how much the chemical is in the air, and how long throughout a person's lifetime he or she may have been exposed to that chemical. Because EPA analysis must be protective of human health, we use these estimates on how long people are exposed that are only extremely high end. For exposure to EtO, we are talking about people who live nearby American Contract Systems. Additionally, for community exposure, we assume that people spend all of their time in the area where the risk exists. Specifically, we assume exposure for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, from birth to the age 70, that they're breathing EtO in this area where the risk exists. Those might not be realistic assumptions because everyone leaves their home at some point, but these assumptions do ensure that we're being protective of human health for everyone, even the most extreme situations. For worker exposure, we assume exposure 8 hours a day, 240 days a week for a period of 35 years. And we also take into account that any worker protections that are in place, such as personnel protective equipment. The gradient map displayed on this slide is used to show ETO risk from American contract systems. I would also preface that we believe that there's an elevated risk to people who live near American contract systems. But I want to be clear that there's also potential risk to people who work in these facilities or who work and go to school nearby these facilities. Now I want to point out a few features on the map. The dark orange box is the facility itself. The lighter orange area is a non-residential area near the facility where the risks are high. And the blue area indicates the residential areas where risk at or above 100 in a million. The area of elevated risk extends from Lettuce State Park and East Fletcher Avenue on the north side to East White Way Drive and Temple Terrace Family Recreation Complex on the south, and from Brightwater Boulevard on the west past Arbor Island Boulevard and Unicorn Road on the east side. In the blue area, the darker shade reflects higher risks and lighter shading lower risk, albeit still at or above 100 in a million. Note that as you move away from the facility, the blue shading gets lighter, meaning that the risks get lower. I want to note that there is uncertainty in these estimates as both operations at the facility and weather can change, but these are the best health protective estimates that we have available. At EPA, we use 100 in a million as our benchmark for identifying whether risk levels are considered higher and are of concern to EPA. When we say 100 in a million, we're saying that we estimate ETO exposure could contribute to the increase of 100 cancer cases if 1 million people were exposed at the concentration levels for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, from the birth to the age of 70. We start our calculations at birth because we want to make sure we're protective of children. Under the Clean Air Act, we focus our risk where people live. We also are concerned about risks to workers and others who might spend part of their time in the light yellow or non-residential areas and in the facility itself. But for this analysis, EPA focused its modeled risk on the residential areas. When we share more on actions the EPA is taking to address risk to the workers and others who spend time in these areas, non-residential areas of the facility in a moment. The information we're sharing today and that we have posted on the web is all based on information that EPA collected from American contract systems about their use of ETO. In many areas, several facilities have already taken action to reduce ETO pollution, and others are planning to do more to reduce their ETO fugitive releases. At EPA, we're very concerned about the risk in this community. We have also learned that ETO is not a chemical that lasts for a long time in the environment, like lead or the forever chemicals like PFAS that you've been hearing about on the news. This means that by reducing the amount of ETO coming out of this facility, it will also reduce risks to the neighboring community right away. Again, today our focus is on American Contract Systems located at 7802 East Telecom Parkway here in Temple Terrace, Florida. The facility has been utilizing ETO to sterilize surgical kits and medical supplies and equipment since 2010. I thank you for your attention today. At this time, we will turn over to our moderator, Rachel, to share information, and we will take a few questions at this time. Rachel?
Thank you for that information, Tony. For those who are just joining us, you can use the Q&A button so that you may privately submit questions. If you are having any trouble accessing the features in Zoom, please reach out using the Q&A feature. If you are listening on your phone and cannot access the Q&A function, press *9 to let us know you're having technical issues. Once we identify you by the last 4 digits of your phone number, press *6 to unmute. We will now take a few questions from the Q&A module. I want to emphasize that we will have several more opportunities for questions to be answered later in our session. Right now, we'd like to know if you have any questions about any of the risk information you have just heard from Tony. And please know that we have additional presentations coming soon on the actions EPA is taking to address this risk. If you wish to have your comments and concerns included on the record as part of the formal process for any of the EPA actions we are discussing today, you can do that separately. Now, if you have a question, please feel free to raise your hand, type a question in the Q&A function, or if you're on the phone, press *9 to let us know you would like to speak. I'll begin with the Q&A. Some of you have already been placing questions there, and we'll start there, okay? So the first one is thank you for alerting the community about the use of EtO in Temple Terrace. Secondly, I have several questions related to the measured values observed and to what it really means to our community in Hidden Oaks. My main interest is the actual usage of EtO. Number 1, how does American Contract Systems handle EtO? Number 2, what are their disposal procedures? And number 3, are they in compliance with local, state, and federal regulations? All right, we'll have someone from our panel to unmute. Thank you, Tony.
Okay, Rachel. The first thing that I would make sure that everybody understands is that the permitting process for these facilities in the state of Florida has been delegated to FDEP and then down to Hillsborough County. So with specific questions about the facility, its operations, its permit, and things of that nature, I will have to defer to FDEP and Hillsborough County. And so we'll let them start by answering those questions. Jeff Sterling.
This is Sterling Woodard from the Hillsborough County EPC Air Management Division. The facility is currently in compliance with their permit, which they have, which is a minor source general permit. We were out in the facility back in 2019, at least twice in March of this year and then in May. So they're currently in compliance with their permit. If there's anything else we need to add, Hastings Reed or Jeff Kerner would be happy to follow up on that.
Yes, hello. I'm Hastings Reed. I'm the Deputy Director of the Division of Air Resource Management with Florida Department of Environmental Protection. The American Contract System, I believe, receives shipments of EtO and then uses that in its process. There is no disposal of it. The process is just used the gas is used in the process and then emitted through the stacks as air pollution.
Excuse me. All right.
And Rachel, the one part that I did not hear answered, I guess, explicitly is the use of the EtO. And what happens there is that American Systems Contract receive material supplies from various hospitals, clinics, veterinarian offices, and they have the surgical instruments or tools that they use for providing that medical help, be it dental cleaning, surgery, things of that nature. And it's packaged in individual containers, and the EtO is used to go into those containers and sterilize and kill any bacteria or germs that exist on that equipment, and then ship it back to the hospital, veterinarian, dental office so that it can be used in its procedures. Okay, thanks, Rach.
Thank you, Tony. I believe that our next question that I'm going to group together was why was EPA unaware of the risk at this facility until only last year? Can you address that?
In looking at the rule governing ETO and what happens in the regulatory process, and it's probably better to explain that first. With all of our standards, our regulatory standards, we have a review process where we go back and look at those standards to make sure that they are adequately protecting human health and environment on a periodic basis. When the evaluation from ETO came up for its periodic review, we learned that the impact, the health concerns caused by ETO was a lot greater than we thought it was. So EPA sent out an information request to facilities using ETO, and we started with the large manufacturers. And we found that the risk that we were seeing from ETO wasn't coming from that. So we start coming down to smaller and smaller industries that use ETO and ended up at the sterilizing, commercial sterilizing facilities. And in that, when they sent their information to us, we evaluated the information that they had sent on their usage and emissions to determine if the risks were coming from there. Now, Seneca is going to explain in a lot more detail those risks that are associated and how they come about. But from the information that we received in the information request, we learned that the impact of ETO from these commercial sterilizers were a lot more than what we thought it was. And that's what got us here in terms of looking at revising the regulatory mandates or regulatory requirements for these facilities utilizing ETO.
Thank you, Tony. I have another question similar to that, if I may. I'm going to bounce around because I'm going to try to group these together so they make a little, they flow a little bit easier, okay?
No problem, no problem.
How much ETO does the facility emit versus their limits and the proposed new limits?
Okay, and that would probably be for either Sterling or Hastings.
Thank you for the question. The facility uses approximately a little less than 1 ton of ethylene oxide per year. And I think that's about it.
Rachel?
I'm sorry, I'm having a little bit of technical difficulties. My screen just went black on me. Okay.
Yeah, I think I got a question. This is Sterling Woodard from the EPC Air Division. I think we got a question about how long this facility has been in operation. They've been at the current location since about 2016, okay? And I think they were at a previous location somewhere in Tampa from about 2010 to 2015.
Thank you, Sterling.
Thank you so much. All righty, I'm just taking my system a minute to think about what I'm trying to do here. So we'll take the next question. Let's see here. There is some confusion on our part about the relationship between American Contract Systems and Baycare. Do you know their relationship?
Can you repeat that, Rachel?
Sure. Apparently there's some confusion about the relationship between American Contract Systems and Baycare, B-A-Y Care. Do you know their relationship between these two companies?
Yeah, that's Sterling and Hastings.
Yeah, I believe that ACS sterilizes equipment for the use for Baycare. So Baycare needs sterilized medical equipment for use at various medical centers in the area. And so ACS provides that service for them.
All right. Thank you. And do you know how much ETO is stored on site? Storage capacity of the ETO at that facility?
Sterling?
I believe there's about 300 pounds at any given time. They store, I think, them in about 20-pound cylinders. So that's about 15 or so that they're going to have on site at any given time. But the permit requires them to track their usage as well as how much they purchase.
And the second part of that question is, what are the maximum quantities allowed to be stored?
There are no maximums. I believe what they're required to do is track that usage and the purchasing to ensure that they don't become a large facility, which would require additional regulations. That large facility category is basically called a Title V facility.
I think that we have covered earlier a little bit about how EPA became aware of ethylene oxide at this facility. Tony, do you want to cover that real quickly? Can you please again explain what ETO is and how it's being used at this facility and how we came to know about the risks of ETO? I think some people may have come in a little bit late. And so we just want to give them an opportunity real quickly to understand how we got to this place right now. Could you do that for me real quick?
No problem, Rachel.
Thank you.
ETO is an odorless, colorless gas that is used to sterilize items and things. In this particular case, at ACS, they use ETO to infuse gas into prepackaged medical kits that include, tweezers, surgical knives, things that are used in surgery, dental equipment that's used for cleaning teeth, and things of that nature. And the gas is, the instruments are put into a container, they're infused with the gas penetrates the packaging and kill any germs that may exist on those instruments. And then once those instruments are treated with the chemical, they're placed into an area where they're allowed to air out. And once that airing out is concluded, the materials are then packaged up and sent back to the facilities for their use. Now, how we became aware of it is because when we determined, I think in 2019, that the impacts from ETO were a lot more significant than we thought they were, we then sent out information request letters to facilities that used ETO to get how much they were using, what they were using it for, how much they were emitting, and did analysis on that data to determine if there was an adverse impact being caused in the community. From the large manufacturers, we found that that was not necessarily the case, but as we went through and looked at the different industry types and got to the sterilization processes, we found that there was a significant amount of ETO that was being emitted into the atmosphere that was being inhaled or breathed by the residents in the community, and found that the risk levels from that was a lot more than we had thought they were, and thought that it was necessary to look at our regulations, revise them, and put more stringent regulations in place to protect human health and the environment. So that's how we got to where we are today.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you. And just to reiterate, I think you guys have found the Q&A button very well on Zoom. And so if you see me looking away, I have two screens. I'm capturing all your questions and trying to group them together so that we can make the best use of our time today. But excellent questions. Please keep them coming in the Q&A chat. Again, for those on the phone, I'm going to give you an opportunity to unmute in just a second, okay? So again, we want to move on to some of the questions that you have here in the chat. Let's see here. May we start the meeting with data collected to date on our exposure to ETO? There have been some questions about monitoring. Could you address those as well, please?
Repeat that for me, Rachel.
Yes, there are questions about how data is collected on exposure to ETO. Are we taking monitoring the data, monitoring the amount that's coming out of the facility is what I'll group those together. How about that?
Okay, all right. For the information request, when the EPA sends out an information request to a facility to gather information to use in its regulatory analysis and evaluations, we have a number of questions that we get them to answer, which includes what are the chemicals you're being used, how much of that chemical is being used, what is it being used for, what type of control systems do you have in your facility, how much is being emitted into the environment, and they look at the different media. air, waste, and land, in terms of the emissions and how much they purchase for use, how much they store at the facility. All of those questions are, and then they explain their control device processes that they use, how efficient they are, and things like that. And then all of that information we take, evaluate it, and then we place that information into a model along with weather information about wind direction, wind speed, things like that. And that model tells us what the potential risk is coming from that chemical. And Seneca, and he's going to explain a lot more about that in the next segment of the questions and answers. But that's the basis on how we gather information, what the information is used for, and how it helps us to make decisions about risk.
Thank you, Tony. Another question is, where can I obtain a copy of the map used to show risk exposure area? I believe that map is available online on our website.
Mhm.
Is that correct?
It's correct, yes.
All righty. And can someone tell me which website that is located on, or put it in the Q&A so that I can directly post that here? I know we have a couple of websites that, and we again apologize for the mix-up with the registration link. Again, in our urgency to get this information to you, there was an error there, and we apologize for that. But we're so happy that you're here with us today. And this meeting will be recorded, it is being recorded, and will also be placed on the website for those who were unable to participate today. Alrighty. So our next question is the facility currently using EtO scrubbers? Hastings or Reed, are you aware of that? Do you feel comfortable in addressing that question? EtO scrubbers at the ACS facility?
Yeah, at the present moment, the facility does not have any emissions controls that are operational, although I am aware that there are emissions controls that are in the process of being installed. So they will have emissions controls at some point here in the near future.
Thank you. A follow-up question to that someone else has placed is, when will ACS reduce levels to below the new proposed maximum EtO levels? Do you have any information on that, or will we address that later in the presentation?
We can answer part of that now, but I think it will be answered more in depth as we move through the presentation. But if the facility installs equipment prior to the finalization of the regulation, they will have the opportunity to evaluate their emissions with the controls in place. And if that control does not meet the regulatory requirement in the new regulation, they do have that specified time frame, 18 months, 2 years, whatever it is in the regulation, to add additional controls to meet the requirement outlined in the standard.
Okay. Thank you. And if any of your questions are not properly addressed, or you'd like for us to take another bite at that apple, please let us know, and we will absolutely address those. Again, the information here will be recorded and placed on our website, and we'll share the website with you again at the conclusion of this, and that will also is available for you in the webinar chat, and that's www.epa.gov/FL/Temple-Terrace-American-Contract-Systems for those of you on the phone. Again, we'll place that in the chat. That was also in the fact sheet that was sent to you, so that you can locate this recording for future reference. Okay, I think we will continue to take questions. All right, I noticed that the Temple Terrace Region 4 has the map on the Region 4 webpage as well, and the fact sheet is also there as well. Another question about ethylene oxide, does the chemical go into the ground and water when it rains? And how long does it take for this chemical to dissipate?
Okay, well, Rachel, let me say, based on our understanding, the chemical is not going into the ground and into the water. So that's the response to that.
Okay, thank you. All right. Answered how about facility improving the problem. Has the facility been inspected by the EPA? Have they received any non-compliance letters from the EPA?
Yeah, with respect to compliance, inspections, and evaluations, as I indicated earlier, the program to issue permits and ensure that those permits are being complied with rests with the FDEP and Hillsborough County. So to my knowledge, EPA has not conducted any inspections per se at the facility. That is done by FDEP and Hillsborough.
All right. Thank you.
The facility is in compliance with its permit and the current federal regulations issued by EPA.
Thank you, Hazel.
Thank you so much. Are you aware if American Contract Systems is currently making any efforts towards mitigation of the emissions?
Casey? Sterling?
Yes, thank you. As I said earlier, they are going to be mitigating their emissions substantially by installing the pollution controls that are right in the process of being installed as we speak.
And would you mind also clarifying how long this company has been in operation and emitting EtO at this site? Does anyone have that? Could you reiterate that, please?
Yeah, I believe this facility relocated from Oldsmar and located in Temple Terrace in 2016 and began operation probably not long after that.
Alrighty, thank you so much. Now, while we're collecting your questions, please continue to use the Q&A function to add those, and we will certainly address those very shortly. Right now, at this time, we're going to continue on with our next presentation. I'll now turn things over to Seneca Anderson, who will be providing information on the proposed rule for commercial sterilizers who use ethylene oxide. Seneca?
Good morning, everyone. I'll make sure everything is good. All right, all technology here. All right, hello, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you all today. I'm Seneca Anderson, and I work in the Regulatory, Communities, and Air Toxics section in the Air and Radiation Division at EPA's Region 4 office. To say the short version of that is that I'm an environmental engineer on Tony's staff. Today, I will be talking to you about the more technical aspects of EPA's proposed action under the Clean Air Act and how it will reduce emissions of EtO from commercial sterilizers like the ACS facility here in Temple Terrace. Next slide, please. As Tony mentioned earlier, EPA is proposing 3 actions to reduce emissions of EtO. I will be continuing Tony's overview of the proposed rule for commercial sterilizers under the Clean Air Act. That's the orange box in the middle there, with some technical details on how this proposed regulation will reduce EtO emissions from these types of facilities. Just to briefly mention, the Clean Air Act, which is a federal law, gives EPA the authority to regulate sources of air pollution. Additionally, the Clean Air Act amendments of 1990 authorize EPA to regulate sources of a subset of air toxics called hazardous air pollutants. There is a specific list of these hazardous air pollutants, and EtO is on that list. So EPA is using its authority under the Act to propose this regulation to reduce the emissions of EtO from commercial sterilizers. Next slide. All right, first, I want to provide a little more national context. There are currently 86 of these commercial sterilizers operating in the country. You can see where they are located on the map here. When the rule was proposed in April, there were 24 facilities that were identified that we anticipated to have the highest level of risk, shown by the blue dots on the map. ACS is one of those facilities with the highest level of risk. We are focusing the conversation today on this facility because we believe there is a higher risk to people who live nearby, but there is also potential risk to people who work in these facilities or who work or go to school nearby. EPA considered all 86 of these sterilizers when we developed solutions to reduce emissions in our proposed regulation. Now, where this pollution is coming from within the facility is important so that we can understand how solutions can be put into place to reduce the risk from EtO. There are two types of ways that EtO can leave a facility. The first is that after EtO is used to sterilize objects, it is sucked into a control system. These systems actually clean EtO out of the air and capture it or break it down so that the EtO that is emitted is a much smaller amount. This type of emissions coming out of a facility is called controlled emissions. As Hastings just mentioned, the facility is in the process of installing controls. The second type of emissions is from EtO that does not get sucked into a control system. It is EtO that escapes through other places, leaks, gaps, even windows and doors. This escaping EtO is sometimes called fugitive emissions because it is not captured by any control equipment. Unfortunately, fugitive emissions are not covered under the current regulation because when that regulation was written, the importance of fugitives was not understood. And just to briefly mention, Sterling from Hillsborough County EPC had mentioned this earlier, that about the limits of use and how the current rule requires control equipments. It's based on usage of EtO. And currently, the ACS facility is using an amount of EtO that places it under the need for control equipment. However, in the proposed regulation, there would be control equipment required for all facilities at any level of EtO use. Next slide, please. So the best solution to reduce the EtO risk from this facility is to reduce its emissions of EtO entering the environment. Our proposed regulation under the Clean Air Act will require greater control of the stack emissions that are passing through the control equipment. But more importantly, it will also require better capture and elimination of fugitive emissions that are not currently being controlled at this facility. We estimate that our proposed regulation will reduce EtO emissions from all commercial sterilizers across the country by 19 tons per year, which is about an 80% reduction nationwide. More importantly, our proposed regulation will ensure that the lifetime cancer risk will be below 101 million in every community located near any of these facilities, including here in Temple Terrace. We are proposing a compliance deadline of 18 months after we issue our final rule, instead of the customary 3-year compliance period, which is part of the Clean Air Act. And we are requesting comments from the public on this proposed compliance deadline. As has been mentioned, there is nothing stopping a facility from installing controls ahead of this timeline. That is the maximum, not the minimum amount. And as was mentioned, this facility is currently in the process of installing controls. We have learned that EtO is not persistent in the environment, as was mentioned earlier. So by reducing the amount of EtO that is leaving the facility, the risk to the community will be reduced quickly. To ensure that our proposed regulation under the Clean Air Act will result in lower ETO emissions, we are also proposing to improve ACS's and other sterilizers' accountability by requiring more robust testing, monitoring, and reporting of ETO emissions. We are proposing to significantly increase the monitoring requirements of ETO emissions to include continuous monitoring, and we are requesting comments on the rule as proposed. Next slide, please. To summarize, our proposed action under the Clean Air Act will significantly reduce ETO emissions from commercial sterilizers like ACS through a combination of much better control equipment for so-called fugitive emissions, tougher standards for stack emissions that are already being controlled, and improved accountability through more testing, monitoring, and reporting requirements. You've heard me mention that the EPA is requesting comments on various aspects of the rule. And you can comment on any aspect of the rule, but there are specifically 82 topics that are being looked at with extra care and concern. So they are identified in the text of the rule with a numbering system that has the letter C followed by a sequential number, such as C-1, C-2, C-3, and so on up to C-82. We have an example here on this slide for the proposed emission standard for sterilization chamber vents, or SCV, as shown on the slide, which is topic number C8. When you are reading the proposed rule, you can just scan for the topic numbers or do a computer search for C- or C-, and that would allow you to search through all the different topics that are being specifically requesting comments on. All right, I mentioned the timeline a little bit, but just to reiterate, the proposed regulation was published in the Federal Register on April 13th. The comment period extends to June 27th, and we are conducting webinars and meetings at the national and local level through the end of the comment period. We expect to issue our final rule within 1 year of the end of the comment period, and we are proposing a compliance deadline of 18 months once the final rule is issued, instead of the customary 3-year period. But as I said, companies have the ability and the discretion to start putting on controls much earlier than that. So this concludes the presentation on the proposed regulation under the Clean Air Act. Now we will turn it over to our next speaker to talk about the proposed action under the FIFRA law.
Thank you, Seneca. I would just like to remind everyone that you can place your questions in the Q&A area in Zoom. We will also offer an opportunity at the end of the meeting to ask your questions live. Now we're going to transition to Erin Jones, the Emerging Contaminants Coordinator in EPA Region 4. Erin is here to talk with you today about EPA's proposed actions to address ETO under the EPA Office of Chemical Safety and Pollution Prevention. Erin?
Thank you, Rachel, and thank you all for joining us this morning. I'm glad to be with you all. And again, in my role as an Emerging Contaminants Coordinator, much of my work focuses on evolving issues that reflect the newest and the best science available to EPA. So very much the space that we're in today, communicating with you about the newer toxicity data that we've gotten over the years and how we are developing policy and regulatory steps to ensure protection of human health and the environment. So once again, this slide is reminding us of the 3 actions that EPA is proposing to take to address ethylene oxide. And specifically, I'm going to be talking to you now about the first action in the yellow circle. So this action, if finalized as it's written, will apply to anyone who uses ETO as a sterilizer, including but not limited to the commercial sterilizers such as American contract systems, but also includes locations such as healthcare facilities. While EPA regulates ETO under a number of different environmental laws, the agency's current efforts to reduce this chemicals risk fall into 2 main categories: EtO is an air toxic under the Clean Air Act, which my colleagues from our air division just talked about, and EtO as a pesticide under the Federal Insecticide, Fungicide, and Rodenticide Act, or FIFRA. So I'm going to continue to call that act and that authority that we have FIFRA. So I'm now going to talk about that. When EtO is used to sterilize products, it is considered a pesticide under federal law. So that is what gives us the authority to regulate it under FIFRA. As part of our mandate under FIFRA, EPA's Chemical Safety Office reevaluates existing pesticides as part of our registration review program. We reassess the safety of each currently registered pesticide every 15 years as part of our risk assessment process and take any needed steps, or what we call mitigation measures, to address any risk that we find. The way that we do that is generally not by proposing rules, which is the way the Air Office functions, but by proposing changes to what is essentially a license or a label that defines how a pesticide should be used. And we do this in a proposed interim decision, or PID. So you may hear either of those terms as far as the FIFRA action goes. In April, we used our authority under FIFRA to propose a comprehensive set of new mitigation measures to protect people facing long-term exposures to this dangerous chemical that's known to increase the risk of certain types of cancer. Our proposal would protect both workers who are exposed to EtO on the job, as well as people who live, work, or go to school or daycare near sterilization facilities that emit EtO. These proposed actions would be applicable nationally to anyone who uses EtO as a sterilizer. So again, not just the large commercial sterilizers treating medical devices, but to all facilities that use EtO to sterilize things. And this includes some healthcare facilities and facilities that sterilize dried herbs and spices to prevent illnesses such as Salmonella and E. coli. Our proposal reflects significant coordination with the Food and Drug Administration, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and the Occupational Health and Safety Administration to deliver risk reductions while maintaining critical sterilization capabilities. The actions we've proposed are driven by the latest available science, including the new agency analysis that showed risks to workers who sterilize products over the course of a 35-year career are more significant than what we had previously thought. We're proposing to prohibit the use of EtO where it's not needed because we have effective alternatives, and this includes certain uses such as in museums, archival settings, beekeeping equipment in North Carolina, cosmetics, and musical instruments. Next, we've proposed several measures to reduce the risk from EtO in settings where there is no effective alternative, like sterilizing certain medical equipment and the dried herbs and spices. So generally, these measures are aimed at reducing the amount of EtO that's used and decreasing workers' exposure by automating processes. For workers, we're proposing to reduce the amount of EtO that's used to sterilize medical devices while still making sure that the FDA requirements for sterility are met. Our proposal also includes requiring engineering controls such as automation, separating HVAC systems between offices and sterilization areas, increasing ventilation in ethylene oxide storage areas, and other emissions capture technologies so that we can reduce those exposures to workers during the sterilization process. And we're expanding personal protective equipment, or PPE, requirements to ensure that workers in sterilization facilities wear the PPE during certain tasks of the process where EtO exposures could be higher. In addition, we're setting a new requirement that all workers in a facility wear PPE when EtO concentrations exceed 10 parts per billion, or ppb, based on real-time monitoring. And that's even for employees in the facility who aren't directly working with EtO. 10 parts per billion, or ppb, is the lowest real-time concentration of EtO that can be quantified in a commercial sterilization facility using today's technology. We're also proposing new engineering controls for healthcare facilities that sterilize medical equipment, such as negative air pressure in rooms that contain ethylene oxide sterilization devices, and the use of abatement devices that will remove EtO from exhaust air and reduce discharge to the environment. So these are just a few examples of the mitigation controls. Additionally, this proposal includes new data collection and reporting requirements in the commercial sterilization facilities that would help us identify and improve protective monitoring technologies and assess the effectiveness of our proposed mitigation measures over time. So based on this data that we're going to collect, we intend to initiate the next round of registration review for ETO earlier than the typical 15-year timeframe, so that we can take faster action to incorporate any needed additional protections, as well as account for any advances in technology. Although we know from our extensive engagement with ETO industry representatives that many of the measures are already being implemented at some facilities, our proposal is going to require these measures at all ETO commercial sterilization facilities to protect all workers. Some of these measures can be quickly implemented at all facilities, such as the PPE requirements, while others could take longer to implement, such as engineering controls. We're committed to taking additional action when the data show us that more protection is needed and when new processes or technological advances can reduce exposures further. Taken together with EPA's proposed air emission standards rule, these actions represent a comprehensive approach to increase safety in communities for workers and for all who are exposed to this air toxic at work or in schools, while we provide a path for these facilities to continue to fill the critical national need for sterilized medical supplies. Moving forward, we're encouraging stakeholders, including community, industry, and public health leaders, next slide, please, to participate in the public process, the public comment process. So as we're striving to reduce the risk from ETO. The public comment for this action also closes on June 17th. And in a moment, we'll walk everyone through the details about how to learn more about our process and how to comment. Next slide. Once the public comment closes, it typically takes EPA about a year to address those comments and make a proposed decision final. So we'll publish the interim decision at that time. And depending on the protective measures, it could take 1 to 5 years for facilities to fully comply. The timeline for the implementation of each measure is something we're taking public comment on right now as part of this open comment period. And throughout this process, we'll continue to work to ensure that the public, especially in impacted communities, has access to the information that they need to make informed, independent judgments about risk and to increase public involvement in the regulatory process. Now, back to Rachel to allow us to address any questions on the 2 actions that you just heard about from myself and from Seneca.
Thank you, Erin. We'll take a few questions from the Q&A module. I want to reiterate that if you wish to have your comments and concerns included on the record, as part of the formal process for any of the EPA actions we are discussing today, you can do that separately. There are several ways to make your voice heard, and at this time, we'll be answering your questions about the information presented today. So I have a few answers to the questions that you have placed in the chat. One of them is, are you going to hold this meeting on another date and send out new information with the correct registration information? I doubt everyone who wants to join is able to because the flyer is incorrect. As Regional Administrator Gettle mentioned in her remarks, we wanted to get this information to you as soon as possible, but this is not the last time we'll be meeting with you and your neighbors. We sincerely apologize about the mix-up. We have plans to follow up with another meeting with additional opportunities to meet later this summer. Okay. There was a chemical spill. There's another question. There was a chemical spill, I believe, from that plant. At least the FAA sent out a NOTAM about a chemical spill sometime about a year ago. Exactly when was their last spill, and why weren't Temple Terrace residents notified at the time? I came across it because my husband is a pilot. The answer to that is we are unaware of the spill, but we'll defer to our colleagues with Hillsborough County to see if they have any information. Yes. I'm looking for our next question.
Sterling Woodard, that would have probably been covered by, our hazardous waste programs. We are the air division, but we can definitely follow up. Facilities are usually required to report, spills or accidental releases, and we can definitely follow up on that one and respond.
Thank you, Sterling. I'm looking for the answer to the next question. One moment, please. It's a lot of questions. Do they have any controls right now? They usually sterilize. The chambers are still vented in the atmosphere without controls currently, so their usage is emitted, whether it's from the stack or fugitives was taken into account. So that was a question about how, Seneca, did you want to address how ETO is emitted from the facility, or someone from FDP? My apologies if I bungled that answer.
Hi, yes, I think you answered it pretty well. I could just clarify that there is both emissions from this facility that are emitted through a stack that comes out the roof of the facility, and fugitive emissions that would escape through other places, leaks or gaps in windows or doors. And as mentioned previously, because of the lower usage amount of ETO under the current regulation, there are no required controls, but that is in the proposed regulation that would change, and controls would be required on all processes, as well as capture and control of fugitives.
Thank you, Seneca. Our next question is, if the facility does not comply with the new EPA regulations by 18 months after the rule is set, will the facility be immediately shut down, or is there some lesser penalty? Can you address that one? Oh, Seneca, there you go.
Hi, if the facility is not in compliance by the end of the compliance window, then it would be turned over to our enforcement and compliance division and our partners at the state and local level, and they would enforce the new regulations, which would now be law, and that they would then be in violation of.
Thank you, Seneca. We also received a question about personal protective equipment that are used by employees. Dr. Walker has responded and said that workers in these ethylene oxide sterilization facilities must wear specialized personal protective equipment as required by the Occupational Safety and Health Administration standards. So we can provide you with more information on the particular regulations if you like.
And Rachel, I'll just add that the proposed mitigation measures in the PID also, again, is kind of tied to a real-time monitoring requirement of that 10 ppb, which is as low as as technology can get right now. But anytime there is an exceedance of that level within the facility, it would require action level based respiratory protection inside the facilities. And so that, and again, those two requirements for PPE and for the monitoring would be 2 years. So the timeline for those would be 2 years after EPA accepts a new label for ETO. Again, so once the PID becomes interim and the labels become enforceable, then we would have a 2-year time frame for kind of the monitoring to take place in facilities and for those PPE requirements to come into effect.
Sounds good. Thank you, Aaron. At this time, I'm going to take a pause and see if there's anyone on who would like to unmute and ask their questions live. Again, if you are on the phone and are unable to type into the Q&A, I would like for you to press star. Oh, is it star 9?
Yes, star 9. Yes.
Star 9. Thank you. I lost my question. Star 9 and let us know that you have a question, and then star 6 to unmute.
I'll also jump in and say those on the Zoom app, if you wish to raise your hand to ask a question, that'll notify us. So you press that reactions icon at the bottom of your screen, and there's a button that says raise hand. Feel free to do that now.
Thank you, Laura. Also, I encourage you, if you have, if we have not addressed your question adequately, please feel free to raise your hand, and we will certainly do that live as well. Okay. One of the questions is, how do residents reduce their own risk in the interim of these measures being taken? Is there a time of day where levels are lowest or highest? So you have Tony or anyone to volunteer? Seneca, thank you.
I'll jump in. Because of the way the process at this facility works, when they put these sterilized items into the aeration chambers, that process takes place over 64 hours. So I would be hard pressed to say if there was a time when emissions would be higher or lower. As we mentioned, the risk is really just based on the amount of time spent near emissions of ETO. So the best way to reduce the risk is to reduce either the time spent near the emissions of ETO, or to reduce the amount being emitted, which is why the proposed regulation would drastically reduce the amount being emitted and bring the risk in all communities near facilities across the country to below the 100 million threshold.
Thank you, Seneca. Another question along those same lines: is it legally possible for EPA to force American contract systems to a different location? We've received several questions about the location of the facility. Why are they allowed to be where they are now, considering the fact ethylene oxide causes cancer? Why do my family and my community need to get exposed to this cancerous situation? More regulation is not the answer. Thank you so much for that question. Questions regarding location of this facility should be directed to your local zoning board and officials. That is not something that EPA regulates, is the location of these facilities. And so any discussion about the location of facilities should be directed to your local zoning board in your area. We do have a couple of questions about the signage regarding again, along those lines. There's a sign at the property for American Contract Systems shown as Baycare Service Center. We had no idea that they were manufacturing with ETO. Is this a compliance issue? Can someone address the signage at the facility?
Sterling.
This is Sterling from Hillsborough County EPC. I believe Baycare owns the building and the property, and I believe ACS has a contract with them to provide the service for sterilization of their equipment and selling it back to them, along with some others that they have a contract with. So the sign out there reflects the fact that Baycare actually owns the building And ACS is actually a tenant with a contract to provide those services.
Thank you. Thank you, Sterling. Okay. Again, if you have a question that you'd like to read out loud and you're on the phone, it's *9 and then *6 to unmute. Also, if you're on the Zoom app, feel free to raise your hand and we will unmute you so you can ask your question out loud. Again, if you have a formal comment that you would like to submit, we will be covering how to do so shortly. Tony, did you have anything to add?
No, the only thing I was gonna add, Rachel, is that we don't typically regulate signage in our regulations, and therefore, as the state adopts, they probably don't either, but Sterling answered the question adequately, so that's fine.
Okay. If it's okay, I'd like to pivot to our last presentation, and we're going to continue with that, and we'll have more time for questions at the end. Our last presentation is going to be I want to reiterate that if you wish to have your comments and concerns included on the record as part of the formal process for any of the EPA actions we are discussing today, we'll explain that process now. There are several ways to make your voice heard, and at this time, we're presenting some information on, Erin will be presenting that information.
All right, thanks, Rachel. So at this time, we're going to reflect really quickly on what we've heard so far. Then we'll take an in-depth look at EPA's ETO webpage and discuss how you can comment on the 2 actions that we shared with you today. So again, just recapping, we have learned that ETO is potentially causing risk to communities and workers, and we have proposed comprehensive solutions to reduce this risk, and we're seeking public comment on these solutions now. Let's go to the next slide to learn more about how you can do that, and then I'm actually going to try to take over the screen and share a web version of this, just so that's a little bit more useful than kind of sharing screenshots. So I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully that is being seen by everybody. And so this is the EPA.gov/ETO webpage. It is a great one-stop shop for everything that we have on ethylene oxide, all the actions. You can learn more about ETO. If you can see my cursor here, we have some plain language materials on ethylene oxide and explainer documents. We have our previous outreach on ETO that's housed here, any public webinars that we've had nationally, and community engagement that we've done. And then I just want to call attention to this comment box here. So this has got a great summary of our public hearings that we had earlier, and then the 3 rules that are open right now for public comment. And you've heard about the air toxics rule and the proposed interim decision rule here today. And then of most importance, how to submit written comments. This link is a great place to go. And this is what it will look like when you click on that. We've got the public comment deadlines and the various ways in which you can make a public comment for each rule. Unfortunately, it's a little bit different for each rule, and that's not to be intentionally confusing, but it's just how our different offices have been working with the docket over the years. And so for our air rule, we have an email option that you can link to straight from this page. We also have the regulations.gov option, just making sure that you end up in the right docket there, and this will take you straight to the right place. Or you can mail comments into this address. And again, making sure to label with that docket number for the air action. The proposed interim decision is the next thing, which is the action I talked to you about. That one does not have an email, but again, it does have the regulations.gov. You can go that route, or you can mail in your comments for that action. So if you were to click on one of these dockets, if you want to do the regulations.gov electronic comment option, I do want to move this around so I can, okay. This is what it looks like. This is the docket itself. This is the air action, and this is where you will see a blue comment button. So you can just directly click on that to make a comment, but I do want to point out that if you want to look at the supporting materials in the docket, you can get to those there straight from here as well. If you click on the comment button, what you will see, and it takes a minute to pull up sometimes, okay, is where you can write your comments. You can type in your comment. If you have any other attachments or supporting materials that you want to provide EPA, you can upload them here. You just need to provide your email address, tell us about yourself, whether you're an individual, an organization, or want to be anonymous. And then just make sure that you again click that submit comment button at the bottom of this page. So make sure you scroll all the way down and actually submit your comment if you go regulations.gov. Okay, I think that I want to go back to the slide deck now, Terry, if you can take things back over, that would be great. All right, hang in there just a moment so we can get that pulled back up. But I do find it more useful to kind of show the actual web page and what it looks like rather than sharing screenshots. So hopefully that was helpful. Great. Thank you, Terry. And so the slide that he's going to share now is a great summary document that shows all. Scroll down, next slide. The one right before the Q&A. Yep. So this is a good summary slide that again shows the website for ETO, how you can email any issues that you have or questions that you have, how you can make comment with the 2 docket numbers. Our Clean Air Act docket is in blue. Our FIFRA or pesticide action is in green. I think we're having a little trouble sharing the full screen version. There we go. And again, just a reminder to comment now through June 27th by midnight. Make sure your electronic comments are submitted before then. And if you decide to mail in a comment, make sure that you mail it in time that we would receive it by that date. So just, I think that is the summary of how you can make comment. Well, if any of that wasn't clear, please feel free to put that in the Q&A and we can make sure that how to make public comment on these 2 actions is clear to everyone that's participating today. So thank you. I'll turn it back to Rachel.
Thank you, Erin. Now that we've shared the information on risks, EPA's proposed actions, and how to comment on those actions, we'd like to take a final round of questions from you all. If you have questions on the American Contract Systems Facility, we can take those as well. Again, a reminder that if you wish to have your comments and concerns included on the record as part of the formal process for any of the EPA actions we are discussing today, that is a separate process, and you should take the extra steps that Erin just walked through in order to officially comment on our proposed actions. Again, please note that if you mail your comments, it does need to arrive before June 27th. All righty. So we do have a question that was sent in that I would like for us to let me get unstuck. One moment. All right. I believe that we addressed the ETO emissions previously from the American Contract Systems as to whether or not they're control point sources or are they fugitive emissions or both. Could someone, oh, okay, and then I'll get to Michelle, sounds good. Could someone address how the emissions are coming from the actual facility, specifically for this particular facility? Thank you, Senator.
Yes. I think I mentioned earlier, but I'll reiterate that the emissions from this facility are currently coming from both fugitive emissions and from point sources. At the current time, the point source emissions are unregulated. And the point source emissions are coming from the chambers that the facility is using. They have them routed through vents and pipes, and that comes out the roof of the building. At this time, they are uncontrolled. But the facility is in the process of putting controls on, and the proposed rule would require these controls and as well as control of the fugitives. But right now they are uncontrolled point sources and fugitive emissions.
Thank you, Seneca. Michelle, I see that your, excuse me, your hand is up. We'll come to you. Can you unmute?
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and turn on my camera too. I just wanted to introduce myself as well and answer one of the questions that we did provide a written answer for as well. So I'm Michelle Zieger. I'm a physician with the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry, and helping to answer health-related questions. So we're a public health agency who focuses on protecting health when it comes to environmental exposures. And so one of the questions that came across was, besides the long-term cancer risks, are there short-term respiratory effects caused by breathing ethylene oxide? And this may be a benefit to all the participants, so answering it live we felt was important. So at the levels of ETO that are modeled or that may be seen in the community setting, even in the vicinity of one of these facilities, the acute type symptoms would not be expected. In worker studies, a lot of what we know has been because of studies in workers or studies in animals or epidemiologic studies, but in worker studies where the exposure is typically much, much higher, respiratory effects have been reported. And so this can include irritation of the respiratory tract, including the lungs. Other symptoms that have been reported are headaches, nausea, and vomiting. But again, at the levels modeled or expected in the community setting, we would not expect to see those types of effects in folks living in the community.
Thank you, Michelle. Alrighty. We have some questions regarding the sampling. Will you be taking ground equipment and facility samples to see if the full effect of ETO emissions? Are there any residues left behind? Can someone speak to the sampling and or modeling that sampling that could be taken in and around the facility and any potential residuals?
Rachel, I think it's probably appropriate to let Sterling and Hastings take the first stab at that from their perspectives, and then I can answer for EPA.
Okay, thank you. Sterling or Hastings, could you speak to any monitoring that's done in and around the facility and if there are any residues left behind?
Well, I'll click on, if Hastings, you want me to go ahead and take it. But what we would do is we do have not some monitoring in the area. We actually have what we call a toxics monitoring site. It's the only one that we have, and one of the ones that is part of the EPA and the state's air toxics trend network. We have one which is located over like in East Hillsborough County. It's our Sydney site, but it's only about 8 miles away from the facility. And even though that's a background level, the ETO does not stay in the atmosphere that long. I mean, it stays in the air sometimes in the summer a little bit shorter than it is in the winter. But it's probably about 2 to 6 months that it's actually in the air. But all of our levels that we've seen at our Sydney site are in fractions of a part per billion. Okay, that's not to say what the levels might be in and around the facility, but based on the modeling and the estimates, I'm assuming that the EPA probably has a better idea of what the levels would be in and around the facility.
Thank you so much.
Okay, and Rachel, from EPA's perspective, in our information requests, we do work with FDEP, Hillsborough County, and the facility to get the emissions information that they have on record. And we take that and we enter that into our modeling system, and we determine the potential risk from that. EPA will probably not go down to take samples or water or ground soil to determine what the concentrations are. We rely on the information we get from the facility. And in that, if we have a need to, we do sometimes go coordinate rather with the state and with the county agency and go in and physically look at the facility, look at their controls, see what's going on. But we will probably not take samples. We'll leave that to the state and to the county.
Thank you, Tony. All right, and so I would like someone to loop back on the signage question, Tony. You spoke earlier about the signage of Baycare versus American Contract Systems. They have posted an additional follow-up question saying, will there be signage discussing the risks from this particular facility? Can you speak to whether or not there'll be any signage posted addressing the risks from the ethylene oxide outside the facility?
Yeah, to my knowledge, and I haven't completely read the new rule that's coming out that's proposed, but to my knowledge, there are no requirements for signage to be posted at the facility indicating risk. So the answer to that is no, from my understanding.
Okay. Thank you. We have another question about notification of the employees. Can you speak to whether or not the employees who work at the facility are aware of the risks, and have they been informed of what's going on?
The risk to the employees and everything that's associated with the workers at the facility is handled by OSHA. EPA doesn't regulate that. And I don't know if OSHA's on the line or not. I haven't seen any familiar names, but that will come from them. And also through the pesticides law for the workers in terms of what protective requirements and things like that are required, but not from the Clean Air Act regulation.
Thank you. Another question, and again, I'm grouping questions together. Can you describe the timeline for implementation? Again, once these proposed measures are passed, what was the timeline for implementation at this particular facility and all the facilities who come under this umbrella?
Seneca?
Yes, I can answer that. So once the comment period is finished, then it generally takes 1 year to get from a proposed rule to a final rule. And so once the final rule is published, then, well, currently it is a proposed 18-month compliance deadline. Based on the comments that we receive during the comment period, that could change when the final rule is published. But let's say it's finalized as it is currently proposed, just for the sake of the example, that would be 18 months. So when the final rule would be under this scenario would be finalized, then there would be an 18-month window that all facilities nationwide would have to come into compliance, install all the necessary control equipments, operating processes, monitoring equipment on their stacks, and get all their record keeping and reporting processes in place. So that's what the 18 months would be. And then if anyone was not in compliance at the end of those 18 months, it would go to the enforcement by the permitting agencies, as I previously mentioned.
Thank you, Seneca.
I could also add that is the maximum amount of time. It's been said before, but it's worth saying again that there is nothing stopping facilities from attempting to install controls well ahead of that timeline.
And I can add for the pesticide action, again, it's a separate action from the Clean Air Act action, but very similar in that there's about a year to take in the public comment, and then they would finalize or publish the interim decision. And again, start accepting new labels at that point for ETO. There's a year period where they would be able to continue to use existing labels at that point. But the new labels would be coming online, and then following that 12-month period, the new label would go live. And that is when we have the 1 to 5 year implementation. Again, we're taking comment on all of those as well. And kind of the feasibility of those implementation timelines, and the urgency of the need to have the new labels in effect in the implementation periods. And again, so that is kind of the timeline, that a little different again, but it's more centered around our authority to protect workers working with pesticides, but again, works hand in hand with the air rule, again, because we're going to have real-time monitoring inside the facilities, that will alert folks that when it goes above that 10 ppb level, that a release has occurred. So again, all of these actions are kind of working together to reduce the overall risk to the broader community and to workers that are outside, and to folks who spend time during the day, if they don't live there, but are working or going to school near the facility. It all kind of works together to reduce the risk.
Thank you so much. We want to emphasize that all of these details are a part of the comment period. If you have comments about the implementation timeframe, please formally submit that as a comment, and the instructions are here on your screen as well. Again, this is just what the proposals include currently, and those are up for comment. At this time, if you're on the phone, we encourage you to, and you have a question, please feel free to *9 to let us know that you would like to be unmuted, and then *6 to unmute. If we have not addressed your question and you would like to verbally share that with us, please feel free on the Zoom app to raise your hand, and we can unmute you as well. Again, if you want to have your comments and concerns included on the record, please follow the link to regulations.gov and follow that process to formally submit your questions, your comments.
Yes, are you still sifting through questions?
I am.
We had a question regarding what testing the federal EPA has done in the facility. And so I did want to just address and reiterate that the risk map that we shared and the numbers and map that we've been talking about are based on modeled risk. And I'll talk now about why that was done. So the short answer to the question is that EPA did not do any testing or monitoring out in the community for ETO. And I'll talk a little bit about why that was done that way. So when trying to do monitoring or testing for ETO in the community, or what we would call ambient monitoring, the ETO that we would find is so low that there are a number of technical challenges to being able to monitor it, such as the short half-life of ETO out in the environment and just the low concentration. It provides a lot of difficulties in trying to get accurate monitoring data out in the community. However, when when monitoring out of a stack, for example, the technology is a lot more robust. The concentration is a little bit higher. The environment is a little more controlled. And so the technology that we have is a lot more robust, and we feel a lot more confident in that data. So using that data, or in this case, just the usage records and the facility configurations, such as the stack heights and the local meteorological data, the local weather data. EPA used all of that. Oh, I'm sorry, my video was not on. I thought my video was on. Sorry about that. So let's see, where was I? Okay, right. So using all that data that we had, the model was created, and because of the little more robustness of that data, it was found to be a better way to be protective of health and get a better picture using modeling as opposed to using monitoring out in the community. I hope that answered the question. I'll turn it back to Rachel.
Thank you, Seneca. I have another question about the ACS facility. Please tell us when this company estimates it will complete its current installation of measures to reduce emissions. I don't know if we have that information. Could someone from FEP let us know if you have an idea if the company has a timeline for completing its current installation of measures? And I have another part. It's mentioned that some steps are already being taken by ACS to mitigate risks. Do we know what they have done and when it will be completed? So someone will those ones.
Yes, so at this moment, it is my understanding that we've issued a permit that allows them to install these controls. And they have been in the process of getting local approvals and engineering approvals needed, and that process has been ongoing. It has been ongoing for quite a bit of time, so I'm hoping that it's coming to its conclusion here sometime in the next, intermediate time period, maybe a month or less, maybe a little bit more. But it's a moving target when there's all sorts of things that need to be, contractors and things like that.
Thank you so much. We have a question about the dissipation question. You see that you use the term dissipate, but I'm confused about where the chemical goes, especially since it's being emitted apparently 24/7. I think we had another question about it going up into the atmosphere. Can someone address the how EtO reacts in the atmosphere, please?
Rachel, I have some notes on that, and feel free, the rest of the panel to chime in. But in the environment, ethylene oxide is broken down by several types of reactions, including oxidation, hydrolysis, and biodegradation, so breakdown by bacteria. In the air, the most likely degradation pathway is oxidation via free radical formation. And we had some questions in our national webinar about the half-life of EtO. So some estimated half-lives of the degradation of EtO in air can vary widely from approximately 1 month to a little more than a year. In our EPA 2016 hazard summary, we estimated anywhere from 69 to 149 days, and that was dependent on whether it was summer or winter. So there's a weather effect on the degradation path as well. And that's for a half-life in air. But then again, it can broader dissipate depending on weather patterns. A kind of a visual analogy, you can't see EtO, but a visual analogy of this might be the recent fires in Canada, where we had the smoke issues coming from there, and it was kind of spreading across the country. Just thinking about EtO in that way, it can spread out and get less, it diffuses over an area. So that's why we're of most concern nearest to the facility. And then again, it doesn't hang out in the environment for too long. It's not a very persistent chemical, and it can break down again via these oxidation pathways in air.
Thank you, Erin. We do have a question about our communication with the City of Temple Terrace officials. Tony, can you address our communication with the state and local officials, elected officials there?
I can, and Brandon can probably expand on it more specifically. But when we identified Temple Terrace as a concern with respect to these EtO emissions coming from ACS, we did reach out to the local officials, to the and state officials, to make them aware of what EPA had identified, and had conversations with them to make sure they were aware and had the opportunity to involve themselves in this process. So yes, they are aware of the issues going on in Temple Terrace, and they have been engaged in the process to some extent.
Thank you so much. Again, if you have a question and you'd like to raise your hand, just use the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen on Zoom. If you're on the phone, feel free to press *9 to let us know that you have a question and *6 to unmute.
Rachel,
oh.
yes, I would
Oh.
like to add on to what Tony just said. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brandy Jenkins, and I'm the Public Affairs Director for EPA Region 4. I would like to thank all of you for joining us today and clarify that we notified the city of Temple Terrace and the city of Tampa and Hillsborough County officials regarding the meeting. We have not had one-on-one discussions with them at this time, but we anticipate having discussions, further conversations with them moving forward, as with you all, the community. And we will continue to keep all of you updated on the next steps. Thank you.
Brandy, before you skip away from me, the question that was going to next was, how can we sign up to be notified of the final rule? Are they further notifications that we'll be making to the community as these measures are put in place?
Thank you for that, Rachel. Yes, what we will do is we have a master list of email addresses and addresses that we are using to notify and to keep you all updated. When the rule is final, we will send out an update through that email list, as well as post it on our website. It will also be posted on the National Ethylene Oxide website for EPA.
Thank you so much. Again, if you have formal comments that you would like to make on these measures, please follow the instructions on your screen. Go to www.regulations.gov, and there are 2 actions there that you can comment, one for the Clean Air Act and the second for the FIFRA Act that Aaron described. The comment period is open now through June 27th at midnight. If you would like to mail it in, there are instructions on that website as well. Again, we thank you for your comments and questions that you've submitted here. Again, if you'd like to submit your comments formally, those instructions have been shared with you as well. Just want to, before we wrap up, see if there are any additional questions. Please put them in the Q&A button on your screen in the Zoom app, or let us know on the phone if you have any other questions that before I turn it over for closure. Oh, Michelle, I see your hand.
Yeah, hi, Rachel. I just wanted to make sure that we made folks aware of some resources that are available through ATSDR and its websites. And I believe those are going to be posted. I sent the links along. But there are several resources that can be helpful. One is called the ethylene oxide clinician brief. So folks who may have health-related questions and are going to their physicians to ask these questions, there is a brief or information that's available that can help physicians sort of navigate these waters around ethylene oxide, because it's not something that some of the physicians may be aware of or may know much about. And so that is one resource that we can, but folks can bring that to their attention. There's also what's called the ethylene oxide toxicological profile. And this is a large document that contains a lot of information about ethylene